We finally got the end to what seemed like the never-ending saga and story of whether or not Aaron Rodgers was going to sign with any team, regardless of if it was the Pittsburgh Steelers or not. But obviously, with the news yesterday, Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler in 2025, probably his last season in the NFL. And he's going to be attempting to do something with the Pittsburgh Steelers that he and they have not done for a long time, and that's have success in the playoffs. Now, I don't really need to go through the history of Aaron Rodgers' previous team, the Jets. Everybody knows how that story ended. I think everybody really knows how the story ended with him in Green Bay. And I'm going to kind of try to, predict how I think this story is going to unfold in Pittsburgh. I really don't think it's going to be pretty. I really think this could end ugly. You have a lot of things in play here. First off, if there's like a record for the fastest an offensive coordinator has been fired, I would almost bet that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to break that record this year. I really don't see how the offensive mindset of somebody like Arthur Smith really blends with the play style of someone like Aaron Rodgers. I really don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to have the patience for it. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is really going to have the patience to be in Pittsburgh. I know they just shipped out George Pickens, and I think somewhat that might help the situation. Not saying anything bad about George Pickens, but I don't know if those two personalities really would have meshed well together. But it's really going to be DK Metcalf, a little bit of Pat Freiermuth, maybe if you get a good year out of Calvin Austin again. And, I just think Pittsburgh at this point, they're not really equipped to make a Super Bowl run, which I think is what Aaron Rodgers wants to do. I think that's the only reason he's really still going to play anymore is to try to win a Super Bowl. The other thing you have at play here is going to be this, this long-standing record that Mike Tomlin has had as head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers of not having a season below a 500 winning percentage. And I'm not going to just say like, oh, well, if that record ends up being broken this year, then he's going to get fired just off of that. I think if this ends up being as big of a dumpster fire as like the Jets situation was, the Jets situation, they fired everybody. And I don't think it's I don't think it's very wrong to assume that maybe Aaron Rodgers had a little bit of a hand in that. I really don't think that's wrong to assume that. I really don't think it's wrong to assume either that the Pittsburgh Steelers, their ownership group, their general manager, their front office, I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of are feeling like it's maybe time to let go of Mike Tomlin to begin with. And if this situation goes wrong, then what other choice are they really going to be left with? Because I'm sure Mike Tomlin is going to bat for Aaron Rodgers. I'm sure of it. And I'm sure that the front office right now, they love the idea of having Aaron Rodgers there. They love the idea of possibly bringing a guy who maybe isn't in the peak of his career anymore, but still can be a solid enough quarterback to get this team to the playoffs, have them go on a run, and get them to a Super Bowl. But that's just not what we've seen from Aaron Rodgers for the last 5 years, really. The stats have been great. There's no denying that. And I'm not going to sit here and say, statistically, he hasn't been a top 10 quarterback for a majority of the last half decade to 10 years. He's been one of those guys. But in terms of bringing a team higher than what they're, it just seems like the Packers in the last few years that Aaron Rodgers was there, the Jets, even worse than average. The Packers were kind of average towards the end. The Jets were well below average. And a lot of that is because of who their quarterback was and how he orchestrated himself as a member of each of those franchises. Not just as a football player and as a guy who throws a football, but as a guy that the other 52 players are around every single day. It just never worked. These last last 7-8 years. It just hasn't worked. I know there's been playoff runs. I know there's been NFC championships. I know that there's been moments where Aaron Rodgers has been an MVP, but at no point have any of the teams he's been on shown, especially in the last 5 years, 4 or 5 years, shown that he's still at that point where he's as valuable as any other player in the league. He's better than any other quarterback in the league. He's better than half the other quarterbacks in the league. He hasn't shown that for a long time now. And this just feels like if it's really going to get ugly with the Aaron Rodgers situation, just how his career is ending, it might spell the end for a lot of guys in Pittsburgh. And not just front office people, not just coaching staff, but maybe players. Players might ask out. Players might ask to be traded. Players might retire and say, I'm kind of done with this stuff. You know, I really think this gets ugly. And I feel bad for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I also don't, because I feel like this has kind of been the sentiment from a lot of people regarding this kind of saga, as I called it earlier. And I don't think anyone was really predicting that the Steelers are going to be this great team because of Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he's a 42-year-old quarterback. This isn't Tom Brady when he was 42. This is Aaron Rodgers at 42. I think it's a much different situation. Tom Brady went to a team that had probably the most elite receiving core, and they even added to that after he got there. And they had a great offensive line, and they had a great defense. I don't see Pittsburgh with any of those qualities. I really don't. And they don't really have a running back. I know they drafted one, but it's not like that is really going to mean anything yet. If he's great, then he's great. But if he's not good in the NFL, then what good is having a drafted running back? So to me, this is going to get ugly. I could be completely wrong. And if I am, then great. But I really don't think I'm going to be on this one.